This presentation for the lentic AIM training is on section 6.4 in the draft field protocol on WoodyStructure. Why do we collect WoodyStructure data? It's important habitat information for wildlife. It helps us understand a site's condition relative to a site's potential. Through these methods, we can quantify the heights and age classes of the woody species in a given site. Tells us how tall and how many, are they young, are they old, and is there recruitment happening at a site. To conduct these methods, it's important to have some key pieces of equipment in order to make the measurements. The first is to have a WoodyStructure and annual use data sheet or an electronic data capture tablet, such as an iPad, to take data in the Survey 123 app. You also need a graduated survey rod or height measuring stick with graduations in centimeters or meters, such as an avalanche pole with clear markings, shown here in the center. You also need 3 30-meter measuring tapes and chaining pins. You can follow along with these methods on page 106 of the draft monitoring protocol. The first step is to establish and anchor the transect. In most cases, the transect will already be in place from having conducted LPI and vegetation heights earlier in the sampling process. And so on those same transects, WoodyStructure is collected in a second pass of the transect. Data for WoodyStructure are collected at 1.5 meter intervals along the transect in rectangular quadrats that are 2 meters wide and half a meter long along the transect. So you can see in the diagram in the center here, the rectangular quadrat extends 1 meter on either side of the transect, and it goes 50 centimeters down the transect. Within the quadrat, within each quadrat that you measure, you will identify all woody individuals that either rooted in or overhanging the 2 meter by 50 centimeter quadrat. So for example, in this example, for illustrative purposes, I'm going to have 5 woody individuals either rooted in or overhanging this example quadrat, and I'll talk through how to record their data. First, you record each species. In this case, I have 5 individuals, 4 species. The top one is Ribes, the second one down is the Tamarisk. Then I have 2 smaller Salix down towards the bottom of the quadrat. And then I have 1 Populace Vermontii that is, it is not rooted in the quadrat, but its canopy is overhanging the quadrat. So in step 2, I've identified all the woody individuals and recorded their species codes. Then I noticed that the Tamarisk is dead, and if an individual in the quadrat is dead, then you circle the species code. The next question you ask about each individual is whether it is rooted in. In the case of the Ribes at the top, yes, it's rooted in. So then we go to the next question. Is it rhizomatous? Yes, Ribes has a rhizomatous growth form, has many stems coming out in a spread out manner across the ground surface. It's hard to tell an individual. And so we don't record an age class for these types of growth forms. We simply note that it's rhizomatous, and we go to the next step, which is to record the height. Now, moving down the quadrat here in this example, we go to the Tamarisk, the dead Tamarisk. It's not rhizomatous, so then we will need to determine the age class for that individual. And the same with the 2 Salix. They're both rooted in, and they are not rhizomatous, so we will determine their age classes. To determine the age class for each individual, you'll need to look at Table 12 and Table 13 on page 108. Table 12 is for single stem species such as Salix goodingi or cottonwood, aspen. And so for each of those, you'll need to identify the thickness or the diameter of the stems and the height of the individual in order to place them into age classes. So there are 3 age classes: seedling, sapling, young, mature, based on how thick the individual is in their stem diameter and how tall they are. For multi-stem species, such as many willows, you look at table 13 to determine which age class they fall into. And again, we have seedling, sapling, young, and mature, and different definitions for each category as far as the thickness of the stems and the height of the individuals. Once we either identify the individual as rhizomatous or give it an age class, then we go to determine the height. We determine height for all individuals, whether they're rooted in or overhanging the the quadrat. So for example, to determine the height class of each individual that's either rooted in or overhanging the quadrat, we use table 14 on page 108 to identify what height class each individual falls into. Each height class has a range. The smallest height class is height class 1, with a range from 0 to half a meter, on down to height class 6, which is the tallest height class of over 8 meters. So here's an example of how to fill out the data sheet. In this example, we had no woody species at the 0 meter mark on the transect, so we moved right on down to 1.5, which is the next increment. At 1.5 meters, we had a Ribes aureum. It was rooted in, so we said, no, it's not just overhanging, it's rooted in. It's rhizomatous, so it doesn't get an age class. We simply note rhizomatous, and we give it a height class of 2. The next individual is the dead tamarisk, so we circle its code. It's also rooted in, it's not just overhanging, and it falls into the mature age class category, and it has a height class of 3. Next, we have our Salix godingae. It's also rooted in. This one is small, it's a seedling sapling, and it has a height class of 1. Then we go to our overhanging populace. This is the populace Vermontii. It is overhanging, so it gets a yes. So it does not, in the case of the overhanging populace, we do not give it an age class. We leave that blank, and we give it only a height class. In this case, it's a height class of 6. Next, we realize we forgot Salix that was rooted in. So we go back and we write down the Salix. It's rooted in, it's not just overhanging, and we give it an age class of mature and a height class of 5 based on the diameter of its stems and the height class of the whole individual. Then we're done with that quadrat. We go on to the next mark, which is 3 meters on the transect, etc. Here's an example of what the electronic data capture looks like in the Survey 123 app. So you can see it prompts you to record each item for each individual in a given quadrat. And to make sure that we have quality data, please make sure you look at this checklist each time you're collecting WoodyStructure data, and following the data collection to make sure that each data sheet is complete. The WoodyStructure quadrats are collected on the correct intervals, so 1.5 meters. That observers only measure plant stems that are either rooted in or overhanging the quadrat. That species, if they're recorded, are also included in the species list. That species names or codes are complete, correct, and consistent with the project plant coding system. And last, that if there are any unknown plants, that they're described according to the unknown plant protocols, photographed, and specimens are collected. That concludes the presentation on the WoodyStructure methods. Thank you.